Hey everyone, Jason Shepard here, M0A Online Ground School. In this video, I'm going to share with you 3 ways for easier VFR flight planning. What is happening? M0A Online Ground School, Jason Shepard here. Welcome into our new series on flight planning as we're building up to this in March. By the way, it's Sun and Fun coming up at the end of this month. Hope to see you all there. We'll be in our same spot, Hangar D, booth 92. Looking forward to seeing you all there. I know this is titled VFR flight planning, but I promise this will apply to each and every one of you here. Now, before I get into these 3 steps, just for better, for easier VFR flight planning, I need to share with you a definition. Because before we get into this, I need you to please make sure you are planning a true regulatory FAA to the book cross-country. Cross-country time technically, did you know, can be logged for any flight from one airport to another. There's actually no distance requirement. However, for the purposes of training and to meet aeronautical experience requirements, different certificates have different distance requirements. For example, you're probably familiar with the regulations for private pilot. We find them in 14 CFR 61109. And it states that the cross-country needs to be more than, underline that more than for me, more than 50 nautical miles. For sport, it's more than 25 nautical miles. So remember that, more than 50 nautical miles. So a 50 nautical mile cross-country, it doesn't cut it, does it? Now, some cross-country flights need to be longer, while allowing for landings at intermediate points that could be less than 50 nautical miles. But they may have a provision, by the way, for a specific, like a longer segment. For example, maybe you remember, you're getting ready to do it, that what we call the long cross-country for private pilot. Well, that long cross-country for private pilot must be 150 nautical miles total distance, with landings at 3 points, and one segment must be more than 50 nautical miles. Now, I want to emphasize that if cross-country time is logged for flights 50 nautical miles or less, keep it somewhere separate in your logbook, possibly a different column, and actually some logbooks and EFBs now even have this built in. Now, I know you may have deviated around that airspace and that added mileage and time, or deviated around some weather, but that's not the mileage that the FAA looks at. The FAA looks at straight line airport. I took off here, I landed here. Is that distance, no matter how many roundabout ways you took to get there, is that 50 nautical miles or greater? I share this because I made this mistake and had a student go for check ride, and we just mismeasured one little cross country. It was actually 48 nautical miles according to the check ride examiner, and I was a young flight instructor. I didn't know any better, and I felt really bad for that. Maybe you've been in that spot before. I've learned my lesson. I'm sharing that with you all. So if you divert, whatever that may be, it's all about straight line distance. Now let's get into the 3 tips here. Tip number 1 is this. I need you to plan your route with purpose. What do I mean, plan your route with purpose? Well, let me show you something. Let's plan a cross-country from Ocala, KOCF, to Cross City, KCTY. I can just draw a straight line. Look at that. A beautiful straight line. It is literally that easy. I measured as 54 nautical miles. It's perfect. And now I plan cross countries with a little bit of margin. Let's do a 54 or 55, even a 60 nautical mile cross country, just for some buffer so I don't run into that same position I was in decades ago as an early flight instructor. But this is the easy, straightforward cross country. I plan my route. It's a beautiful straight line. There's no problems with this. There's no airspace. There's nothing to contend with. Obviously, we don't know weather yet. We'll talk about that, though, in a bit here. Let's look at a different cross-country. Let's plan from DeLand, north of Orlando, down to Lakeland, actually where Sun and Fun is going to be. Let's draw a straight line there. Well, look at this straight line with me. Does anything jump out at you here? I mean, we're going right through the Bravo depending on the altitude, and there's nothing wrong with that. You very much could get cleared through the Bravo. But what if you don't? What if they tell you they're just too busy right now and they cannot clear you through the Bravo? Well, okay, I could go under it, you're thinking. But do you see that first shelf there? That first shelf is at 3,000 feet is where that starts. That's awfully low for a cross country of this length. But then I do see the airspace does lift a little bit, kind of the further we go. So we could plan that with some step-up climbs after certain checkpoints maybe. But maybe we just want to be smart. Let's say we're going to move our route west as a plan B. Let's go DeLand, Leesburg, K-L-E-E, then to Lakeland. Now, that's an option too. But do you see now I have restricted area 2910, Bravo and Charlie to deal with. Now, also remember here, if we're stopping at Leesburg, remember the definition is a 50 nautical mile straight line distance between takeoff and landing. Does going DeLand, Leesburg, well, that's a very short leg. That doesn't count towards your 50. It's not a total 50, it's one leg. Does Leesburg to Lakeland meet the 50 nautical mile requirement? You've got to have at least that one 50 nautical mile leg if you're talking your long solo cross country to private pilots. So always be thinking about that. Now remember, a cross country is from the original point of departure to final destination. So in this example of DeLand, overfly Leesburg, land at Lakeland, well, the mileage to Leesburg, it doesn't count, it doesn't matter. Plus we didn't even land there. Now, if we were to land at Leesburg, yes, it's a cross country by definition, right? One airport to another. However, if you're using this flight to meet experience requirements for, say, private pilot, where we need that more than 50 nautical miles distance, well, I would be sure to really measure and remeasure that leg from Leesburg to Lakeland. By the way, I measured it at 51.2 nautical miles. In my opinion, that's a little bit close to satisfy the private pilot requirement. So if it were me, I'd add some margin there. I'd go a little bit further. I'd go to Bartow Airport. I'd go a little bit further south. All right. And again, this is just in case you get a check ride evaluator who maybe they measure it a little bit differently. But beyond that, here's my point. You can never assume in route planning. You should always have a plan A. Yeah, I'm going to try to go straight through the Bravo. I'm going to try to get cleared through it. A straight line I'm going to draw. That's plan A. Plan B, well, I could go under it and step up as the shelves lift here. Plan C, okay, I'm going to work that. I got to know who to talk to get cleared into that restricted airspace, or who to talk to, to figure out if it's hot or cold. I can fly through restricted airspace if it's cold, I just cannot if it's hot. Now, lastly, one last thing on route here. What if I just told you this route we just spoke about? What if it's at night now? How does that change your routing? Some of you might be thinking, Jason, how does night affect my routing? Well, it does for me greatly. I'm always thinking, where would I go if my engine quit? During the daytime in Florida, it's flat. I have plenty of options. At nighttime, we have some remote, swampy parts of Florida as well. I don't want to be, going to that dark spot that you don't know if it's a lake or whatever it is. You need to go to well-lit areas. So at night, you'll often see I'll adjust my cross countries and I'll fly airport to airport or kind of city to city just to stay over the best I can the well-lit areas. Now, step number 2 to really improve your cross countries here, just make them so much easier for you, not only planning them, but actually flying them. Step 2 is to choose checkpoints that work. Airports, unusually shaped lakes, large rivers, major roads, large high tension power lines. All of these things make great checkpoints. I want you to avoid things like antennas. People, I remember, student pilots, learners get so caught up in, I'm going to use that 200-foot antenna. I see it on the sectional chart. I'm going to use that as a checkpoint. Let me tell you, you will never see that 200-foot antenna from 3,500 feet or whatever altitude you're doing this at. You'll never see it. So avoid antennas. I'll make an exception to that. I'll let you pick water towers or things that like that. They're big and prominent, but just a cell phone antenna, no chance. Small cities, try to avoid that. I mentioned lakes earlier. They can be good if they're uniquely shaped, but avoid lakes that are around 10 other lakes. It's just hard to distinguish, is that my checkpoint or is that my checkpoint? Tip number 3 is this. It's to always be adjusting. You know what? You're going to be off course. You're going to be left and right of course and making those adjustments. Oh, that checkpoint, that was supposed to be off my left-hand side and now I'm flying right over it. Or worse, now it's off my right-hand side. Honestly, it's no issue. Let's just fix it. Good for you for catching it. let's also be practicing pilotage as we go using your sectional chart. Remember this, everything I see on the ground, well, it may not be on the sectional chart, but everything I see on the sectional chart will be on the ground. Does that make sense to everybody? Now, I know some of you are thinking, Jason, what about electronic flight bags, all these apps, ForeFlight, Garmin Pilot, etc.? What about all these? I personally am a huge fan of all these apps. I fly with them as well, but I'm a bigger fan of learning the old school way and having a skill set to fall back on. Let me tell you something. Who's ever had their iPad battery fail? Here's a better one. Who's ever had their iPad overheat? I made that mistake once, put it up on the dash, went to get my taxiway diagram and temperature alert. Thought, that's a problem, right? I love all these apps, but I need to have a backup. Just the other day, I still find myself printing out taxiway diagrams of airports I'm going to from the trauma of that time I tried to get my taxiway diagram. I was at an unfamiliar airport and my iPad overheated. I had to sit, I remember, it sounds silly, holding it up to the Cessna 172 air vent just to get some air flowing over it. Meanwhile, the line guy's standing out there in front of me going, what's taking this guy so long to taxi out? And I'm cooling off my iPad because it was my only source of taxiway diagrams. I love electronic flight bags, but always have a backup. You know, speaking of iPads and electronic flight bags, did you know all this month M0A is giving away an iPad? Head over to m0acontest.com to enter. We are giving away an iPad so you can get into that flight planning, not the overheating part, you know, not the battery dying part, but get into kind of flight planning. We'll call it 3.0 as well. I still want you to learn the old school way, but we're going to teach some new school stuff in this series here as well. Win an iPad. It is the year of 2-3 Mike Zulu. Every month of 2023 for 2-3 Mike Zulu, we are giving something away. Last month, we gave away our Check Ride books as an ebook to all our online ground school members. If you're not a ground school member, I encourage you, and you love this teaching style, head over to m0atrial.com to take a free trial, see some of the lessons inside the online ground school, consider signing up, and consider heading over to m0acontest.com as well so you can enter to win that iPad. Can't wait to read your comments down below this video, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you're watching this. Have a blessed, abundant, outstanding rest of your day. And most importantly, remember, a good pilot is always learning. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you.